Welcome back to The Price of Business. I'm your host, Kevin Price, talking about you and your business. Rick Solomon, he's a regular on The Price of Business program, and, you know, he's now becoming kind of a sensation with our people on social media. They like what he says. He's extremely bright, very informed, really a thought leader when it comes to macro, global economy, global political situations, and we're always glad to have him on the program. Rex is also a owner, an entrepreneur of a company called Houston Jewelry, and their website is houstonjewelry.com. Before we get into our topics today, and they are kind of sobering, just before you and I got on the air, we were talking about the situation. It's unbelievable. But before we get into that, talk about the great business you have there called Houston Jewelry.
Well, we are pretty much the go-to store for fine jewelry and diamonds in Texas, in southern Texas for sure. We've been doing it family's been doing this. We've had stores in Houston since the 1860s. Besides specializing in fine designer jewelry, we do a vast amount of custom one-of-a-kind pieces, and we are one of the leading buyers of precious metals and gemstones in the city. And so we're seeing an uptick in people, unfortunately, selling not because they need to, but because they have to.
Right. And but you guys have seen a lot, including the crazy 1980s when about 70% of the Houston economy was dependent on oil. And although it's not quite as bad today, we are really beginning to feel the ripple effect of plummeting oil prices. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, we are located in the energy corridor, and the majority of our customers for the past 50 years have been energy, largely energy, from the days when we were in the Houston Club building downtown, and starting in '66 across the street from the Pennzoil building. So, to me, when I look back at my historical spreadsheets, this last year is looking very similar to the dynamics of 1986. And I know that's, for those of us that have been here a while, that sounds like a nightmare scenario, but our advantage now is we know how this plays out, what the good play is, and what tactics failed in that previous major downturn.
Yeah, and it hit hard, but when it bounced back, it was pretty robust, didn't it? By the early 90s, it was a totally different situation.
It was. It rebounded. It was not as over the top, but those businesses that chose to increase their marketing during that time period really advanced their market share. And businesses that were not quick on their feet, even well-established ones, just disappeared. Lots of well-established ones disappeared. And the whole real estate scene changed tremendously. Areas of town which were the hottest areas in the late 70s, early 80s became ghost towns. And they've really never recovered. High-rise condo buildings that went up just on the mere promise of, there's going to be somebody who's going to want to take this because people are making a lot of money in oil, became rental units, and took decades to recoup the initial investment. I look around and see all these Uber-priced high-rises around 610 and Westheimer, and I'm thinking to myself, there aren't that many people who are looking for this right now. And this does not end the high-end retail development. It'll eventually be filled, but when you see empty locations in premier retail centers, that's a problem.
Right. It could end up having a similar fate to those in the 1980s, where they end up, over time, because they had to lower their prices, they eventually just became Class B or even less properties.
Right. Well, that's when Sharpstown fell from being a primary mall into a disaster. It was the 80s. I mean, before that was the highest volume mall in the city, far outselling the Galleria, because that's where the traffic went. And so that's my take on where we are in the spring. We have had a little bit of relief on oil recently, but still the mid-30s is not where we need to be.
No. Now, this week...
last week, and, the whole route, last year this time, it was bumper-to-bumper traffic with 18-wheelers and supply pipe trucks, et cetera. It was empty. And I saw past yard after yard of just idled equipment.
So in this week, in fact, Iran, as you know, tested a missile with pretty inflammatory message towards Israel on it. Thank you very much, Wes, for your money. But I'm wondering if that kind of thing can lead to the kind of tensions. We all know what Saudi Arabia thinks of Iran for totally different reasons than Israel does. I keep thinking there might be a trigger that's going to force OPEC to say, okay, it's time to tighten it up. What do you think?
Well, but a more likely scenario is that the president actually takes action on his promise that if Iran violates the agreement, and Iran also said they were thinking about scrapping the agreement entirely, that sanctions would come down faster and harder than before. If that's the case, then that Iranian oil would immediately be shut out from the world market, and that would go some manner to easing the situation economically. But I had a supplier who was at the Hong Kong show last week, and he said that the Chinese are just not buying. And the Hong Kong show for the past 10 years has been an extremely strong show. It's one of the earliest ones of the year, and get an indication of where manufacturing is going and luxury goods are going. But as long as that Chinese engine is out of gas, the world economy is not going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah, no question about it. It's very, very dangerous times. With the last couple of minutes left, a lot of my audience on the social media, they like it when I talk to real business owners. They've mentioned you in particular as someone who's very savvy of what's happening in the political front, kind of real world. There's a lot of romanticism on both the left and right when they talk about politics. You tend to take a more realpolitik view. What's your assessment of the race for the White House?
Well, it's the Drudge headline last night pretty much said it all, the incredible shrinking campaign. I think it's telling that Neil Bush has joined the Cruz campaign as a finance person. I think that at this point the only credible alternative to the orange one is Ted. But we're looking at a situation where we very likely could have two contested or brokered conventions. It is not implausible that Sanders beat Hillary in Michigan. That was not supposed to happen. But you've got all these superdelegates, which is inherently undemocratic in the Democratic Party.
Yeah. So, the superdelegates are really designed to protect their status quo. And for a party that cries about Republican elitism, it's funny they're the only party that has superdelegates.
Right. And those superdelegates are former presidents, vice presidents, current lawmakers, and a whole bunch of lobbyists, which is just absolutely humorous in the irony of it. So you have a situation where we all know that the Obama does not like Bill. He probably really doesn't like Hillary either, but she was a necessary evil. We also know the manner in which the government works, that the decision whether or not to prosecute rests in the executive branch. Therefore, we have a strong indication that Hillary probably committed a felony, and that there are people in prison today who committed those same actions. And it would not surprise me if we get, after the primaries are over, that all of a sudden indictments are handed down, and the president says, well, I have no control over this. This is the rule of law, et cetera, yada, yada, yada.
Yep.
And
the best line, I'm sorry, go ahead. We've got about a minute left.
And then who comes in at the convention? Well, they really don't want Bernie. Oh, what do you know? Here is candidate Biden. It's a repeat of 1968 all over again, where Hubert H. Humphrey, the vice president, did not run into the primaries, and he winds up becoming the nominee. Similarly, you have a situation, the Republican camp, where they may very well change the rules and on the delegates, and it could be Mitt, which I would not have a problem with. I think that Mitt sounded like the president last week, and Donald, there's too many questions about Donald Trump's businesses, too much smoke and mirrors, and his tax returns remain a serious issue. Any business person knows, fine, you're under audit for the IRS, got 3 years, they can cover 3 years of tax returns, and the last one, they can go back another 3 years and makes a total of 7. The statute of limitations, 6, the statute of limitations is 7 years. So fine, Mr. Trump, release every return prior to 2008. It has no effect on your case in an audit at all.
Yes. I gotta wrap it up with that. It's Rex Solomon. By the way, the best political line I've heard was Ted Cruz saying for the Blue Party, orange may become the new black, referring to Hillary Clinton. That was a good line.
Exactly.
Hey, thanks so much for being with us, Rex. And Rex Solomon, he can be found at HoustonJewelry.com. HoustonJewelry.com. More for you after this.